So, YouTube. I didn't really look, but a lot of people are phoning it in. Ooh, except for Rooster Teeth, Total Biscuit. Yeah, there's a couple others here who are not phoning it in. But yeah, look at this. They're just cutting these little tiny wimpy things and calling them podcasts. That's pretty pathetic. Pretty pathetic, people. You need to do better. Yeah, some people have got me schooled here, though. The podcast show on Geordie Jordan is something I haven't watched, but that's 3 hours, baby. 3 hours, podcast show number 6. Damn. Well, at some point, I'll be able to talk some people talking with me on the damn camera that I own. Live feeds, though, it's like, what do I want to do? That would be my big thing. I think I got like 5 people on Google Plus at the moment. Haven't really messed around with it much. Kind of like turned it on and then a lot of other things to do that day, so that's all I did really. Turned it on and did 1 or 2 things on there. Atheism is unstoppable. He's making videos. He's switching accounts around. Ooh, bitch. Sneaky bitch. Oh, the Game Society pimps. Having blog rolls / features / whore. Them out to you, my audience. If you like gaming and humor, you gotta go check them out. They're pretty damn ridiculously offensive, but it's funny. And they sometimes write a script on these things, which is like, what? Did you write a fucking script for once? On an LP? On a silly-ass gaming video? You son of a bitch. What the hell are you doing? That's the way I do fucking videos. Holy moly. Oh yeah, I was gonna watch the, thinking anime music videos of all of these various YouTube users, like, floating around in my subs. Just cover all of the topics that they cover. But do it in this crazy ass, like, overly long podcast thing. That's what to do. I know. Actually, that's just kind of like me going through things and yeah, YouTube's already doing shit, isn't it? You know, like, wait. MMO X review. MMO. All capitals. X. Little tiny X. Review. Spelled normally, capital R, all the rest of it normal. Yes, it's a lot of views. Does really good editing, but he pretty much only does Skyrim modding. Pretty much. He tried to start Dragon Age Inquisition, and he just ran away from it like a big wussy. Yeah, he's pretty damn good at the one-man operation kind of deal. Definitely one of those people that's been on the website a while, making waves, doing things, and not a lot of people talk about him. He's out there, though. MXR is the name that he goes by most often in the internet land. And yeah, I'm sure the really hypersensitive people of all kinds out there really hate his content. Like, really hate his content. Because it's almost all like naked ladies in Skyrim kind of shit. But he's like genuinely funny, and he has a lot of skill at editing, like a lot of skill. I mean, he has the right programs to be doing it. I have no idea what, but he has the right programs and everything he needs. But you can just see from one person's content to the next, especially when they do these kinds of like intensive videos. Yeah, it's like, damn, he should probably sideline into it. I don't know what the hell he's thinking of doing, but go fucking Hollywood with the fucking editing, because it's goddamn good. And yeah, that's definitely one of those things that's kind of prevalent here on YouTube, is massive difference from one channel to the next. Not just on things that I've complained about with like, oh, you need so much startup cost, but just like the raw skill involved with like each of the separate elements. is so vast, and it kind of comes out when you watch like a lot of videos from one person or another, just like, oh, you're not very good at this over here, but this thing right here you're really kind of good at, and then this over here you're like, oh my god, why don't you make thousands of dollars doing that every second that you're doing that, you know? And with him, it's definitely editing on the like, hold on, WTF kind of stuff. Because he does these great cutaways and all this cool shit, and is much better at like syncing in music and stuff than I am. Though I don't know why he ever stopped doing the fucking Skyrim dance video thing. I mean, crap. That's like all I would do with this channel if I had all the same setup as him. And all that shit with all those mods and everything. It would just be nothing but the hobos and all these sexy lady chick mods all dancing to fucking J-pop just 24/7 on this goddamn channel. And every once in a while I'd get on here and maybe do a podcast or whatever. But you know, it's like, that would be my focus. There wouldn't be any need for other forms of entertainment. Once you have video game characters dancing in synchronization and multiplication of their wireframes to graphical formatting to your television screen to your eyeballs to your brainstem to your gray matter to my podcast. So obviously I totally and completely lied about not doing featuring other people's content type stuff. This is actually something that came up around a character here on YouTube I have yet to thoroughly look into. I've only seen the whoop-de-doo, everyone's making fun of him kind of side of things. The fellow who goes by the name of Brian Wiley is who I'm talking about. When he was just kind of put before me in the context of, hey, that guy, you know, it was like, oh, this isn't the worst idea I've ever heard. In terms of kind of like reviewing the reviewer of the reviewer kind of stuff, where it's like someone else steps into YouTube and looks around YouTube and then talks about YouTube into YouTube. You know, it's like, well, yeah, that's not the worst idea I've ever heard at all. That actually kind of like works, but it also has to be executed well. That's the whole thing about like, I'm from the blog world, everyone, listen to me. You know, it's like we were doing that a long time ago in lots of different ways, depending on where we were and what it was and how geeky we were all getting with it. But yeah, it's a thing where, you know, each user comes to a site and depending on how long they use it and what kind of website it is, you know, like is it a social platform? Is it a purely business and professionalism platform? Like, what is it? And the more social mediums, like this one right here, tends to bring people's, like, true persona, sometimes, to the agenda or the programming, the podcast, the gaming content, the music reviews, movie reviews, whatever we're doing on here today. Tends to kind of bring them on out. Let people see what's really happening just a little bit inside of your head when you're doing this stuff, people. And I'm looking in your head through the internet, and I'm going to talk about it on my damn channel, because I don't care. I get all crazy all the time, and then just shut it off when people are like, enough, it's time to get serious now. But if you let me just go like this, it gets fucking weird. So that's the whole point of the podcast, is giving me a chance to just kind of be like, yeah, listen. I go on forever, but I'm making a point. It's going somewhere. Most people don't want to listen. They don't want to sit down, relax. They're so damn busy. Well, what are you doing here on the internet when you're so busy doing this kind of thing? You know? Get on LinkedIn. Get super serious. I actually need to get on that website. But no, it's just a matter of taking a moment to kind of relax and like not be running around like with chickens with their heads chopped off in the digital era just because it is the digital era. And that's all I'm talking about, is I'm just a little bit, not a lot of it, but a little bit old school with these things. Where it's like sometimes it's good, I can't do it right now, but sometimes it's good to just kind of like set out the cell phones and the cars, get the fucking internet shit all in the fucking same place over there, and then like close the door and go in the other fucking room. Do something else. just like talk to people for a while. And we're right here. We want you back as soon as you're done. Listen to our podcasts. Watch our videos. Here on YouTube only. But be sure to actually try and have real conversations with people. Because it is kind of hard. That's a lot of what the kind of oldest message in communication arts, it's sometimes called, is that it's hard to do it. That it's not that hard to speak to the room. That's what I'm doing right now. Not that hard. But to really relate to people, find a way to help them cope, or just be there, if nothing else, is very good. And when everyone's running around too much and doing a little too much all at once, like we all do, I do it. I was doing that most of today. It's good to just relax, sit back, listen to the Eruptide Podcast as I moan and complain about YouTube users that I don't like. And I fawn and parasite, I believe is the proper term in the internet circles, off of everyone who's cool, who's already here. And what else are we gonna do? Well, there's fancy terms like culture, socioeconomics, things like that. But I like to use the term life, because that just gets me out of everything. Gets me out of it. What are you doing? Life. That means I can use music, and I can use comedy, and I can make a political statement, and I can do comedic satire right on top of all of it if I want to. So yeah. But yeah, that's the podcast's kind of general formula, is that I don't have to have a formula, you know. It's so exciting. On that note, if you're ever feeling down and life seems crazy to the point that you just can't manage it, all you gotta do is go to an LP channel called Tiptoe Happiness. Yeah. No spaces. Spelled like it sounds. Yeah. Go do that. She has one of those voices. Female LPer focused in BioWare content. Also does The Sims, I believe. Yes. She has that voice where it's just like, oh my gosh, I was angry about something. My computer crashed or something. And now Tiptoe is talking, and I'm okay with it. Yeah, she's also a fellow fan of the BioWare Studios game developers. Peoples, over there, we love you. So that's kind of what I was talking about there, is, you know, like people who like share fellow interests and have common ideas about what exactly media and comedy and arts and video production and all these things are supposed to look like. You know, it's like we all tend to kind of shuffle up next to one another, and everyone's supposed to stay quiet about it. You know, you're supposed to like shut up. And that's not really how they do it in the like bloggy blog we think we're important because we write world. That's not it there. It's like anybody that you would say like of merit or something like that about is like somebody where you should like squeeze them in on a feature piece, or like you should like reference them in your writing or something. Because that's how that all works. It's like, hey, look, you, me, you, hey, you. And it's no different here in terms of anything I'm doing. And I had kind of expressed that I don't really care the, like, outward reaction stuff. I was like, no. You guys have no idea the ideas that I come up with that I'm just not putting on the damn internet, and I'm not performing that skit, and I'm not fucking doing that. That's why I can't crank content, is because it's like, hey, you know, I know exactly what the hell to do. I ain't gonna fucking do it. I'll get in the mood to do it at some point, you know, whatever it is, but I ain't gonna just do it. I know what'll happen. I'll spam that video everywhere, and then everyone I actually know will be the only people that'll fucking see it. So, you know. Yeah, that was funny. That's a little me story thing, is like when I first, before I was doing any of this, when I first started blogging and like found out what a blog was, kind of point, I had it where like my auntie was the only one reading my stuff. Like the only one reading my stuff. And I didn't know that for a while. I was just like, I have like 2 hits, and like, I'm badass because of it. And it's like, yeah, one was Tina, and the other was that spam thing you had to filter out. And it's like, like, oh, shit. But now it's like, oh, yeah, that's right. I remember now. It's about frickin' two things in the internet world which perfectly transfer from whatever area to the next, and it's all blog industry stuff. Where it's like, yeah, look, don't die in IRL or here online. Don't die. You can be gone for a little while. People have lives, you know? But don't die. Don't friggin' disappear. Don't start a crusade and then suddenly frickin' vanish, you know? Like, that's really common. Don't do that. And another thing that's pretty damn real is the animosity factor. That kind of stuff. I've alluded to stories like that. I'll get into it if people ask me more than I'm just gonna tell all my stories like that bad story kind of thing. But yeah, that's just how it works. Is it's important whenever you're going after your opponents to use tools. We call them writer's tools, like satire, stern critique without refrain that combines constructive criticism, things like that. But it's also important to just kind of have fun in the process. So that's a lot of what that is everyone disagrees about how the hell you're supposed to critique other people. Some people are like me, where they're very like, hey, if it's in jest or it's not a serious, like 100%, oh, screw this guy kind of thing, then I don't need to back shit up. You can just challenge me and I'll make my point more clear because I'm not making a big ass case. I'm just saying, hey, screw that guy. And when I'm gonna do the big long case thing, I'll break it down. I did it for Ayn Rand. You probably know her as like Ayn Rand or something. A-Y-N. Yeah, everyone says it wrong. But yeah, it's not Anne, it's Ayn. Or Ayn, I think I've heard somebody call her before, Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand was a semi-prolific writer who started a kind of freaky philosophical faction/cult called objectivism in the era of William F. Buckley and the beginning of what most people call conservatism in America. She was the woman from Russia here, joining hands with McCarthy to say, what now? That Jesus sucks, that poor people should be ignored, and that money, just money, was the only real value out of life. That's really all there is. Everything else, feelings for other people, wanting to see the community you started out in be better off before you pass your motor cord, before you die, do something good with yourself, whatever. Money, big money, little money, middle money. Only thing that matters, according to her little thing, was the big money. And that if you didn't get there into the big money, you just aren't worth shit. And a lot of people want to argue the point that that's not true. And a lot of them have only read her books. And quite frankly, she was kind of a bad writer. Not the worst I've ever seen. But yeah, she's not that good. I couldn't finish the fucking Fountainhead because it sucks. And everyone who's tried to figure out this figure of literature has read fucking Atlas Shrugs. Yes, I fucking read that. I'm not reading it again. I read it in fucking high school. John Galt wants to come over to your house and tell you all about libertarian ideals, but while he's there, he's gonna also tell you about atheism. And how the creator of what most people define as conservatism in the United States was a total douchebag. William F. Buckley can just suck a big old cock and just die in the river. Just throws his ass in, Ayn Rand teabagging his ass on the way down to the creek. That's right. No, it's a serious thing. She really hated that guy. Like, really hated William F. Buckley. And she had this whole, like, way past the kind of Gloria Steinem kind of feminism all the way out to the, like, massive man-hate thing. That was kind of the end of her objectivism madness. Because she was with some dude, I don't remember the name of, and they had a big nasty falling out, and then she, like, blamed everything on him or some crap like that. And all their followers got all all dispersed into two groups once they split up, and it was all a big fucking Jim Jones-esque thing. But her writing does stand on its own merits, like most writers will go on about with this thing, and that's a lot of what I wrote in the blogs about her, is just, you know, she was good at conveying her political message through a fictional narrative in Atlas Shrugged. But beyond that, her writing is shit, and her philosophy... my ability to speak is hampered by the fact that I was in an ER for 5 fucking hours today for the sake of a friend. Yes, her ability to write is hampered by her intense need to spread a political agenda, and that's why she became this, like, crazy leader of this little crazy movement that never did anything and never had any point to it whatsoever. You know, like, that's what that was. She was always, like, a genuine egomaniac from the beginning, and she was very forward about it, which I give her credit for. Her writing stands on its own merits. She's saying, when you're successful in business, after an attempted venture, somewhat like what I'm doing at the moment, that's the only thing that really matters in the world. And I'm more like, hey, that shit is good in my book. I'm the one that's, like, had actual long-ass arguments with actual fucking socialists from Europe. Like, I'm that guy. You know, so a lot of people want to think about crap like, oh, you know, the way our politics works in the United States anyway, it's just like all the liberals are just fucking totally socialist, and then all the conservatives are like just completely figuring it out for the right way, and it's like, no, you should fucking talk to people more often. Most people who vote Democratic constantly don't think much of the damn government. They just don't see another way. There's like, what do you do other than that? Oh, look, why is it that all these libertarians who get all this steam on the radio and on the internet never get fucking elected ever? You know, they win the straw poll. The Rands win the straw poll at CPAC over and over and over again, and then they lose the fucking election every fucking time if they even make it through the goddamn primaries. They're not doing shit ever. Because every mainstream Republican just points out the fact that they're fucking pro-weed and pro-legalizing prostitution and a bunch of other shit, and then they start trying to either backpedal on it, or they own up to it, and either way, it fucks them in the polls, and they can't do anything, so woo, politics. But yeah, the point is that, you know, people are always gonna get up on here and be all like, listen to me, I know the world. And that's the point here, is, you know, there's just one more voice doing that now. And oh good lordy, how I wish I could have my little record of all the things I ever did to kind of show you guys, like, damn, some of you just waste your goddamn time on this stuff so hard compared to when I'm trying to waste my time on this shit so hard. Like, wow. And then some of you are like, good. Wow. Whoa. You need massive, you know, ego pumping, like right now. IMO, you know, IMO. That's my point on that. It's just, it's an opinion kind of shit.
Oh, when it all, yeah, it all falls down.
This the real one, baby.
What's going on? Eric Lightborn / Eruptide / Eric Gakey / the guy on your thing right now is here doing a video with you. It is The Truth About Spock in front of my face by Stefan Molyneux, and it is Rest in Peace, Leonard Nimoy, video he has posted. It is a little bit old, just a little bit, but I have it here. Let's see what's going on.
Hi everybody, Stefan Molyneux from Free Domain Radio. This is a tribute to the recently departed Leonard Nimoy and his character Spock, commonly known as Mr. Spock, of course, who was a Vulcan with pointed ears, a character in the Star Trek media franchise. A hyper-rational, non-magical kind of elf, I suppose. For those who don't know, Vulcans are an integral part of other Star Trek.
So yes, this is true. I am not totally shocked to hear this revelation that elves and Vulcans are connected, because they both have pointy ears, and they both kind of are aristocratic, or perhaps erudite, or perhaps intensely logical about things. Actually, that's not really the elves. The elves tend to be fiercely paganistic, or various other things to that degree. But there's definitely a connection there. Gene Roddenberry was no doubt influenced by the kind of wider lore of whatever elves are when he made the Vulcans up. And we're going to skip ahead a little.
Science fiction television shows of all times. It's really Star Trek in a way versus Star Wars in terms of multi-billion-dollar revenue and expansions that span over several decades.
Yeah, if
Star
you
Trek
exclude gaming.
was a philosophical show, and it really had a lot of impact and had people think, what is the relation between reason and emotion? To explore, the prime directive of Starfleet was to not interfere with the cultures that you come across, to explore the galaxy without interfering with the local cultures was fascinating, and we all thought, what would we do in other cultures? There were amazing shows. For instance, there was a show where two planets are involved in a war, and rather than actually have a violent war, they just disintegrate people in a chamber. And Kirk's speech that the war has become so tame that you don't even want to stop it is very, very powerful. And of course, the nuclear metaphor there was very powerful. And just so many different shows. There was a show where they went to a galaxy and found ancient Greek gods who had visited Earth. And the idea, of course, that we get sort of a sense of deity from space aliens was mind-blowing at the time and incredibly clever. And of course, there's this idea that says, well, the halo is the light coming off the helmet of the space alien, things like that.
Yeah, it's an old concept to take the kind of standard religious mantra, usually Abrahamic religions, and kind of flip them on their head and use old religions that people don't really do anymore, like the Greek pantheon and various other really dead religions out of that same area, and kind of like throw them in front of people's faces and be like, ooh. And Gene Roddenberry was bringing that tactic from a lot of different writers to the screen for the first time. But my big reaction to what he was just saying is how the show didn't just present this rule about non-intervention as some kind of perfect solution to what they were doing. They recognize the risks, and that's a lot of what divides me from the kind of libertarian sort of stance, is there's a certain amount of risk in any kind of social contract or any kind of government or any agreement where taxation is payment and the, largesse is used in whatever way, but the fundamental element is supposed to be structuring society and making laws and protecting people from foreign invaders, be they space alien Vulcans or be they the crazy Russians or the wild Chinese or whoever the heck is going crazy and trying to take over the world today. That was the point in the beginning. Now we have a very complex and different world, so a lot of people wanted to reduce it down to these more basic formulas of anarcho-capitalism and whatnot.
Particularly compelling. And that, Star Wars is more science fantasy. I mean, the Force and choke powers and swords and stuff like that. It's more like a medieval story set in space, whereas Star Trek, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with it, but Star Trek, I think, appealed to older people and people who could carry some of those lessons forward into their adulthood. Now, originally, of course, William Shatner thought that he was the star. He was captain, and he was the star, but Leonard Nimoy's incredibly effective deadpan, raised eyebrow portrayal of Mr. Spock made him as popular with the audience as Captain Kirk, created a rather significant rivalry. So Bill Shatner thought, I'm the star, baby! And fan mail piled up, of course, in Leonard Nimoy's dressing room. The majority, of course, from women who, in an early and rather space opera kind of 50 Shades of raised eyebrow, wanted to melt the Vulcan man's stony heart. Leonard Nimoy became convinced that he was the show's de facto star and deserved this.
I don't know if this is completely true. This sounds like an awful lot of extrapolation. If you go and look at my blog spot, Eric Lightborn, and go through, down onto the posts, down, there is a thing with Shatner and Nimoy on the Merv Griffin show somebody else put up, and I shared on my blog, where you can see that, yeah, there probably was a subtext in that interview and in their interaction of some amount of professional rivalry, but it wasn't like that show had this, like, singular star. Like, that's the big element, or at least that's been my perception in studying the show as someone that was more familiar with the subsequent Star Trek: The Next Generation, where a lot of the points that he's made in this video thus far are kind of less true, but still present within similar contexts. And yeah, what he's saying here is not totally quite right based off what I've read and what I've seen and what I've been, filtered through by my own eyes and my own thoughts about it. I don't think that's quite right. I think that most of the cast was enjoying kind of momentary, there was the Uhura outbreak and the Bones Love session, and, the biggest ones, without question, were Kirk and Spock, Shatner, Nimoy. Definitely. But, the whole show under, Gene Roddenberry's wings, really, more than anything else, if you ask me, was just amazing in its own right. And then it was delivered in a time when, some kind of idealistic vision of the future brought to the screen was this wild new thing. Like, these days we like our dystopian fantasies and our zombie movies and stuff like that a lot more in that same kind of genre. And back then it was a different era, and people wanted to kind of look into this alternative dynamic where something that could be, in a radical sense labeled perhaps communism or socialism or something like anti-capitalism was presented in such a way that it wasn't scary and wild. It was, space aliens came and we had to kind of figure things out from there, and we ended up doing the Federation and kind of, they don't talk about it too much in the first show, but they got rid of money essentially, but they kind of use a system where it's like, you go over there and you do that, and then everyone knows you're doing that, and then that's fine. So yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's sort of true what he's saying, that there was a professional rivalry, but you can find that like anywhere and everywhere. Was it Spock held the light while Shatner... No, it's who are we playing at here? He's focusing in on the women demo. The ladies. Well, yeah, probably within that, there was a good deal of push and shove. But when you come down to the just super geek time people, it was definitely Nimoy who totally took theirs. And when you get to the, like, freaky thespian poet people like me, you get Shatner people, and we're talking about being Shatnerites and stuff like that. So it's the appeal factor is what they call it. There was a shifting appeal factor when that show was on the air at that time, and that kind of thing really makes, like, acting circles go crazy, irregardless of the context of that kind of situation where the eye of the fan and the masses and the tickets are being sold all for one person all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden that shifts. And then all of a sudden someone has their own little... Yeah, it's happened a million times. Actors, thespians, these people who do this stuff sometimes deal with it very eloquently. Like true gentlemen, like true women of class. And sometimes they behave very poorly. And I haven't found anything where Shatner and Nimoy were throwing their stuff all over the place and it was all a big deal. They were on the Merv Griffin show horsing around, kind of trying to get the spotlight on each one of them at the same time kind of thing. you know, that's how people are when they're out in the entertainment biz. They kind of like to lord that spotlight like I'm doing the Stefan here.
Now, the character of Mr. Spock was a huge inspiration for a lot of budding scientists and engineers. Leonard Nimoy has said that if they meet him, they always want to show him their work and discuss it with him as if he were a scientific peer, as opposed to what he was, an actor, a pilot, a photographer, a poet, and a person who tragically murdered a lot of plastic in pretty terrible final albums.
Bad joke.
And his stock response in these situations when people would say, "Hey, Nimoy, check out my work," he's like, "Well, it certainly looks like you're headed in the right direction." And Spock's philosophical outlook on life has probably quite influenced.
I'm not sure what his point was
the
there. I mean, they just want
and
affirmation.
So let's have a look. It's important. This is where a lot of people get their exposure to philosophy. They get it through religion to some degree. They also get it through the media. They don't really get it so much in school because any fundamental values discussed in school tend to upset or alienate some parents. So that's why school tends to be so relentlessly trivial and boring. But
well, it depends. Good
this was
teachers
one of the
make
earliest
all the
philosophical
difference.
impacts of some of the smartest people on our planet imbibed. So let's have a look at what he stood for. Now, first of all, I've got this from a couple of sources, and we'll put notes in below. But I think it's worth mentioning that Gene Roddenberry, while not an objectivist, was an admirer of Ayn Rand, and apparently he named Yeoman Janice Rand, who was originally supposed to be a major character, after her. He consulted Ayn Rand's book on the philosophy of art, called The Romantic Manifesto, a lot when creating Star Trek. He read a lot of Ayn Rand's, including Atlas Shrugged, The Fountainhead, which apparently he read 4 or 5 times, and The Romantic Manifesto. And 2 of Roddenberry's proteges, Myrna Culbreth and Sandra Marshak, became authors and were unabashed, or are unabashed objectivists. And Roddenberry was a self-described humanist and, like Rand, was an atheist. And that was also quite powerful and quite surprising at the time. The lack of religion in Star Trek was quite fascinating because there was a lot of left-wing ideas
that was the big
that came over from the intellectuals who were fleeing the destruction of Europe in the Nazi period and, of course, in the Second World War. And with the GI Bill, there was a lot of jobs for academics, and so a lot of them came over from Europe and brought a lot of left-wing ideology with them because, in a lot of ways, in Germany in the 1930s, there was a battle between the communists and the National Socialists, the Nazis. National Socialists, of course, won. A lot of the communists fled. And some left-wing people fled as well, fearing repercussions, and rightly so, from Hitler's goons.
They talk about Hitler.
West, and they brought a lot of left-wing ideology. Left-wing ideology is big government is great, which is why you have a federation. There's never really any trade. There's some caricatures of capitalism in the kind of anti-Semitic Ferengi that show up in the Next Generation. But there was atheism and there was government everywhere.
So yeah, I've heard this all before. It's true, all that stuff about Ayn Rand and Gene Roddenberry and all of that. He was influenced heavily by her writing and was like identifying with her and stuff. And it's like, so what? You know, I mean, that's the writer's perspective on these things, as each person's work stands on its own, apart from the influences that led to its creation. Though if you want to like truly understand a work, you really need to go back and like get all the interviews and just everything, and every honest creator, writer, everybody will tell you their influences, just like Gene Roddenberry did. So that's the big thing he's addressing there. And as to the whole good government, bad government stuff, it's a lot like what I was saying before. There isn't really a big difference between good government, bad government. There's just government. And there's many different ways to do government. And the one we do in the United States is called by the big heady intellectuals marble cake federalism. It's where there's a bigger government on top of lots of smaller governments that have smaller governments within them, and it's like a ladder where the people at the bottom, that would be like the city, the municipal They have yay much power to do yay much, and then the next people up, the state, they have yay much power to do yay, and then the federal, boom, they're at the top, and they have all the power, generally speaking, to do whatever they want under the Establishment Clause. And that's the whole thing that makes the libertarians crazy as fuck. They don't even often cite it. Stefan, now that I'm viewing his content directly rather than hearing him commented upon, is making some points that are valid, but for the most part, he's just kind of trotting out Libertarianism 101 like there's some kind of grand philosophical design to it. And it's not that complicated. It's just, hey, give everything to the private sector. That's it. There's not a lot more to it. They don't want to tear out the government. They're not outright anarchists. That's not quite it. You can find those people in the mix there, but that's not it. You know, the main thing is just the whole let's take conservatism and crank it up times 10. And I do tend to align with a lot of libertarians around issues like civil liberties and stuff like that. A lot of the time when I go on my kicks about NSA spying or something, it's not necessarily this person right here on my screen in front of me doing it, but it's people like him that come and join the whole thing about let's do something about it, even if it's just signing a web petition, let's do something about it, kind of stuff. So that tends to be my problem with these kinds of characters, is they present these ideas very much in the spirit of Ayn Rand, where it's not that much of an idea in itself, and they're dressing it up and putting it on and all these things and defining it against the other terms, which is all well and good, but at the end of the day, they don't just fucking say what the fuck they mean, which is what I just said, which is that we want to give all the power to the private sector. Like, that's a fucking great idea. You know anything about boom and bust economies, Stefan Molyneux? Know anything about that? You know anything about dark pool insider trading? You know anything about that? Does that ever ring any bells in there? Yeah. It's not like the private sector's bad. You gotta go find the socialists for that stuff. But a private sector with no federal, state, municipal, whatever authority over it is gonna do whatever the fuck it wants. And they did. In America, in this fucking country, there was fucking sweatshop type shit where people burned to death because there wasn't sprinklers. There's tons of examples of this shit. Over and over and over again. We've got it with 3 Mile Island, and we've got it repeated again, in a different country this time, in Japan, with Fukushima. So it's the same old shit again and again and again, where the government's supposed to be doing a job that we're all fucking paying them for all the goddamn time, whether we want to or not. And they're not going to go away, and they're not going to suddenly shrink in power like because we get pissed at them. But we can do things like try and change the government, which doesn't usually work, but we can try, and some people are trying, and if you think they got a really great idea, you should probably jump on board with that. That's usually what I'm doing when I think someone's got a really great idea. But newsflash, not a lot of people out there have really great ideas. A lot of people out there are kind of like this fellow right here, where it's kind of like, yeah, that's fucking great. Yeah.
His freedoms and liberties were equally constrained as throughout his childhood. You know, we get a lot of this sort of stuff happens in life where you see women with abusive dads and they like run away with the first guy to get away from their dad. The guy ends up being just like their dad. There's a lot of this escape into the tyranny you came out of. You know, if you, without self-knowledge, all attempts to escape just trap you in a revolving door where you don't really get out. You gotta escape your illusions, and then you can escape your history. If your history was based on illusions and tyranny, if you learn the truth, it sets you free. Cliche, but very true.
Yeah, but this is that thing that comes up over and over and over again, which is what the hell is the damn truth? That's one of the reasons why I don't focus heavily on philosophy per se, so much as I kind of smash into it from time to time, is because truth is sometimes, if not more often than not, an enigmous thing. It's kind of moving around. It's a word like justice. It's a word like righteous revenge. That's a term, not a word. But yeah, it's something where, I speak the truth. So does he. We don't line up. So what the hell's going on, And that's a lot of what the, dictionary version definition of philosophy is just, the search for the truth, that kind of stuff. And I can relate to it on the context of, I'm very loath to accept media paradigms and various other things. And I use my little cop-out of, I'm just doing a podcast, a blog, whatever I'm doing about life. It's like, yeah. So a lot of that is kind of a philosophical element to me. But I think I can't let Stefan join the no bullshit crew, I really don't think I can. He brought up that stupid fucking thing about the goddamn bicycle and Shatner bitching. It's like, yeah, Shatner bitches. I bitch. You just bitched about women about 20 seconds ago. What the hell, man? Yeah, it's stupid. Point he's trying to make there was stupid. The political repartee that he brings is not poor. It is not ill-conceived notions of a mind of a crazed lunatic who can't perceive reality or anything like that. But I don't really think he's wanting to be libertarianism. That's at least my impression of him. He doesn't really want to be that. He wants to be the MGTOW King. Yes, indeedy. That's what he's doing. That's what I think, anyway. That's my personal opinion at about 17 minutes in here of actually watching some of his content for myself and not having it filtered through others. Is he's playing at the, oh my gosh, women are pissing me off group of people out there. And you know what, guys? If you happen to be hearing this, come on over. Bitch me out. I'll probably talk to you. I was talking to some of you guys over on another channel. I'll do it again. You gotta actually say something to me, though. But yeah, the whole thing here is just that I think what we have is another fellow on the internet who is just kind of like me in a lot of ways, but has kind of this way about him. A way to be. He's on camera. I'm not. Could do that. Go plug that thing in. It's dark right now, though. You might hear the crickets. It's very fitting, I think. But yeah, we have a matter of disagreement between the Eruptide Podcast and our dear friend, Stefan Molyneux, who has a very PC, lovey-dovey avatar. My space avatar. It's better than his. But his show is not bad. I just disagree with some of the points he's making. And I think I'm right, because I've seen other people cover this. And I think I'm right. But a lot of what he's doing is trying to kind of counteract the third wave feminism stuff. And that's fine. Whatever. I just wish he'd present it more in that context. Because it's always like, libertarianism, oh, by the way, women suck. Libertarianism, oh, by the way, women suck. And he's obviously educated on a lot of different things, but he's also pulling out what we call Rule 34 in Nerdland, within no time in this video. And it's like, really? Have you ever looked at this shit, man? I'm a fucking human rights activist. Hitler was gruesome as all shit. There's no question. His means and methods and all that crap. Whoa. Mama. Sucks to be anywhere near that guy when he was around and in power, Ooh. But Unless you're on his side, of course. But, the people we were doing super business with, Stalin, yeah, they were our super buddies. And we had to work with them, and we were fine with it, and it was all whoop-de-doo. And if you look at the body count and do the little charts and the math about who killed how many people, Stalin killed way more people than Hitler, and Mao's got everybody schooled on that shit. So, yeah, it's kind of silly, this notion that the libertarians present, that, like, government is like this thing that just fucks everything up because it's around. No, it's fucking guys like this, and guys like me, and gals like Ayn Rand, and who else just started shit like crazy? That Jenny McCarthy character, and Glenn Beck and various other figures with the anti-vax shit. Yeah, it's gonna keep happening throughout all of time, where people are gonna use mass communications to feed bullshit narratives and wild speculation told as fact. I don't think that's quite what's going on here. I think the underlying agenda is to appeal to the kind of male outrage kind of thing, and then the main kind of crux of it all is let's all be libertarians, you know. And I don't know, it's like, well, let's see, I'll like reverse the lens here and put it back on my podcast. And what the hell am I trying to do? Well, I'm trying to get people to care enough about me that at some point, if I get all my crud and Dudley Duds all in a line, people are like all, you know, supporting me to just do like freelance writing over the internet and write write books named Friction, write fiction, novels, and occasionally weird poetry. You know, it's like that's kind of like my ultimate goal if I have to just state it. And I'm a liberal, civil libertarian atheist with the tendency to kind of be like whatever with the whole like religion and a lot of the more intense animosity stuff out there. I will jump right the hell into abortion or whatever topic you want. But when you start getting all like, oh my gosh, you're ruining everything by saying these things, it's like, well, is it causing you a big problem to talk about this? Oh, it really is. Whatever. I'm cool to move on to another topic. I'm not one of the people that's actually being serious when I joke about things like, oh, your trigger warnings don't mean shit to me. It's like, no. I know people who've gone through crap like PTSD and shit like that, and it ain't fucking fun on them, and if you just fucking ignore it like it doesn't matter at all, then you're a douchebag. And if you take care about it in the real world and be a little funny on the internet, but when people tell you to cool your shit, actually do it even on the internet, that's called being like a human fucking being. And that's kind of my like subtext, is everybody should like be a good person, or at least try to be a human being that's not totally like messing up everyone else's human experience. And that's a lot of what Gene Roddenberry saw. Not what's in the hard text, but what he saw in the writings of Ayn Rand. That was the whole deal. And he just glossed right the fuck over that. Just like, woo, he was this. And it's like, no, I mean, she was that. She was that. She was like a rampant fucking atheist. Not just like what I was just talking about, where it's like, yeah, I will lay down how like every religion ever is bullshit. Ever. And yet at the same time, as someone standing there and telling me like Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior and without him I am lost, it's like, fuck, that's you. Just think I ain't fucking been in places where it's like, whoa, I really need this, and it's something I can't totally prove and like show to my internet audience like the hard fucking facts on this one, you know. It's like, no, it's not always like that. You don't have to have a perfect life hack inside of your head all the damn time. And a lot of what New Atheism is about is just spreading that idea that maybe what people are freaked out about when it comes to the religion topic specifically is just the notion that when they do let go of this stuff, nothing that crazy happens. You don't actually end up, like, out in the street, like, you know, smashing up your neighbor's windows just 'cause it's funny. You know, it's like, you don't actually fucking do that shit. And that's the whole flaw in this whole thing that these fucking libertarians present over and over and over again like it's fucking new ideas. Let's just give everything to people that are just solely centered around profit alone, and their charity works will, like, bounce back and da-da-da-da-da. It's not quite trickle-down economics, but it's very close to it. It's basically the thing that Karl Marx was just crazy against. It's giving all the bourgeoisie, the elites, maybe even people like me, too, who can kind of do things where other people may not be able to do them. I'm not saying I'm the best at it. I'm just saying, like, maybe I have things going that other people are like, what's that? Things like that. Whenever you're, like, putting out something, you should be, like, held up and, like, kept away from the peasants and the shitty people and the other da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, I don't know, everyone has their own perspectives on this, but it's like my art, my writing, is, like, enhanced by, like, your fucking crazy-ass life stories. Seriously. You know, like, seriously. I get a kick at a really visceral, crazy level at a girl dumping me, or some shit like that. You know, so everyone has a different idea of what amounts to a good presentation, a proper message, a political ideology that makes sense. You know, there's always going to be this fracturing at that point, but we have seen it. What the fuck Stefan Molyneux wants, what the hell Ron Paul and Rand Paul and Paul, what the fuck they want, we've fucking already seen it. It doesn't work that good. It's not that great. It's not something that serves anything but a very small populace of people who are totally based around trade and self-sufficiency. That's not the world we live in. There's tons and tons and tons of people like me that do the digital era thing. And there's tons and tons and tons of people, at least in the context of the United States, who have really, really, really crappy jobs. Or they only work part-time. Or they don't work at all. So, yeah, like, that's the world we have, is the government's there and the private sector's there at the same damn time, and nobody's just jumping up and thriving and making a whole new Silicon Valley out of the Dust Bowl or something. You know, most of what's gonna happen has kind of happened for now. Moore's Law is maxed out. You know, the social contract's well understood by anybody who bothers to research this shit instead of just talk about it on the internet all day like I do. Yeah, you know, Google it. Social contract. That's almost always what the subtext of his videos are, is the social contract is something that's, like, crazy bad to start doing unless it's with business people. And it's like, no, you need both. You need both. It's hard to measure it out, and it depends, and political science. But you need both. Every time there's been a successful nation state, every time there's been a, you know, totally going and at it kind of tyranny system with people in control and government and all these things, there was a combination of forces, not one or another. You know, look at China today. Look at a country like that. Study it. Look what's going on. The people that were the most free, the most kind of known for being young and hip and cool and rebellious, down there in Beijing, are, like, getting threatened with mass extermination if they don't stop their very peaceful, organized protests where they pick up all their litter. And that's with a government where they've got a lot of coalescence between the private sector and the government sector, which we often refer to as communism, but that's not really quite what communism is. That's more just kind of like an oligarchy. That's just like the government kind of just took over a lot of what makes the private sector go in the name of the government, but they didn't take over every goddamn thing, because that's communism. It's just like the government's just kind of every damn thing. And if you're wondering, socialism is the road to communism. It mainly revolves around dissolving currencies and, you know, anything that resembles capitalism, and replacing it with a system where the government, this is the key here with socialism, the government controls the means of production of wealth. People always miss the end there, of wealth. Like the government would decide in a purely socialistic system, the government would be making up their minds, maybe in a boardroom, maybe at the legislature, maybe at the polls, about how much you make as a doctor, or a lawyer, or a teacher. Like, that's communism in full. The world's never seen that. Every time someone proposes it and is like, we're gonna do this, it's just fucking, you end up with China, you know, it's always the same thing. It's people don't do that when they get into power. And that's the real point that I'm making, is that, you know, democracy, for all its flaws, is really the only goddamn thing that's ever done shit to the world that didn't fuck everything up worse. That doesn't mean it's great, it's just like, you ain't got shit better, man. Stefan is not really on the ball with this, I don't think, but in other respects, I think he is good at communicating his point. I'll give him that. But I would still recommend you absorb my content, because it is superior to his in intellectual fiber, comedic value, and entertainment.